All right, everyone, a bit of this is kind of grim and sad, but also it is so goddamn funny because what would you rather have in the current economy, the amount that it would cost for you to buy like 4 bits of asparagus, or 1 share in Ubisoft, which has fallen from, at one point, admittedly beyond the scope of this graph, being like way more like €60 a share. Now it's down to €20 a share. They have had to cancel multiple games, and Skull and Bones has been it's been delayed again.
Who could have seen this coming? Who could have seen Ubisoft based on their recent output, their historical output for maybe the last 10 years? Who could have suspected that making games like Ubisoft do could ultimately result in your company being worth about a third of what it was, and also, people actually talking about, are they going to survive until 2030? Will Ubisoft, one of the big 3 historically, are they going to make it? And a lot of people are saying no, and I agree with them.
Which is utterly insane. I mean, you do have a situation where it's like Far Cry. They've kind of just treated that like a template game. You just keep making more of them, and it's like, all right, you're going to find diminishing returns at some point here in a world where the industry is really trying to push, maybe not always the most innovative, but at least some experiential things, really trying to push those forward. Look at the Sony output that does so very well. I suppose Ubisoft would then say, oh, look, but we do have our quadruple A game. Who knows where it is?
Yeah, the one problem with making a quadruple A game, and I think Microsoft have found this out as well, you have to survive long enough to actually release it. Because if you just spend 20 years making it and then it doesn't come out and it doesn't make you any money, then there's no point in making it in the first place.
Yeah, so I hope you watched our worst of 2022 episode on Ubisoft. It now actually seems that some of the investors appear to agree. Where overall, right, what have they got? They've got their live service titles, they have the IP that they control, and they really don't have a hell of a lot else. Now, they claim that the industry is shifting towards mega brands and long-lasting titles that basically reach people across the globe, across platforms, and business models. Now, in their own words, the last bunch of years, which of course we know have been so very successful, they do in fact represent a strategic development of their strongest franchises into global brands. And they claim that these are Assassin's Creed. All right. Yep. Genuine, fair play. Far Cry.
Nope. I think Far Cry is as mid as can be. It is, I think, I'm not entirely sure on sales numbers and like review stuff, but as far as I guess being a global brand, you need to be in the cultural consciousness. Far Cry 3 did a great job because that was kind of new, that was kind of big. I went, oh, that was actually interesting.
Yeah, we were there whenever like Far Cry was now being talked about.
Yeah, and I remember like the great work they did with Blood Dragon to make that kind of interesting and like really hook into, I guess, a strong set of culture at the time. But that was now like 10 years ago. No, that's actually longer than 10 years ago now. And then you've got Far Cry, and even when they got, I can never remember his name, but that actor.
Giancarlo Esposito?
Yes, and then everyone's like, yeah, that guy, they're going, okay, well this is going to be like the big thing, we'll get this big name actor and that'll bring Far Cry back to where it should be. And then everyone went, it's alright.
Yeah, because the story in the game ended up being like pretty mid.
Yeah, you're like, that's not a global brand, you're mismanaging that into the ground.
Yeah, and you can understand the desire to just keep on going with that. And perhaps they've seen something like, say, in Assassin's Creed, where in Assassin's Creed, while there have been points of diminishing returns, I'm thinking about AC Revelations, the third Ezio game, where we started to see some of those diminishing returns. And then as you start to approach, obviously Unity was... While Unity is actually a technical marvel for its time in so many ways, it obviously was scuffed on launch.
Experience is bad, yeah.
And, by the time like Syndicate kind of was happening, they were running aground a little bit. So they rebooted into the new triplets of AC games. But like the Assassin's Creed brand has overall worked pretty damn well. And they've been delivering vastly different historical fantasies. It is all Assassin's Creed, but Peloponnesian War. I think it was still Hellenistic Egypt, but still Egypt. Everything with like the Norse mythology. I think they've been able to deliver just more fantasies that players will be sucked into within that brand than they've been able to with Far Cry. Far Cry has typically just felt like, oh yeah, this is just going to be a big drug-fueled romp on X setting, but it's all been kind of like pretty standard modern stuff. It just doesn't seem that they've been able to capture people as well as they had in the past, even though I will like give their creatives credit in that they have tried with each setting, like Nepal, America, like that actually all was pretty cool. I think it's just that really some true innovation on that format is needed. It's honestly the typical Ubisoft thing. They think they hit their template where, you know, every game involves climbing radio towers, and they just pump out instances of their template just a little bit too much compared to the rest of the industry.
Yeah, and the same kind of goes, I think, for the Ghost Recon games and stuff, where I think what they largely do is, I guess the analogy is, you can have like a ship full of people who know how to run a ship really, really well, but if the captain of that ship is just going, we're going this way now, and it's the wrong direction, or maybe it's the right direction to begin with, but they don't know how to actually turn the ship, then you could have people running something like a really smooth, beautiful operation, but it doesn't matter if it's going the wrong direction. And I feel like that's all Ubisoft problem, because like, well, obviously the Ghost Recon games are just like, oh, we'll make it this way, and you go, well, even if you do it well within that sort of genre, it's still gonna be like, no one wants this actual game experience. No one wants this player experience this way anymore.
Yeah, it's like we've had it before.
Yeah, and they get stuck to it, and Far Cry is the best example of them going, well, here's the experience. Let's just do that again. Like, no, you need to make a slightly different experience.
Yeah, even though like we'll all look at the Far Cries in a bit like, oh yeah, these are well-made games. There's definitely a lot of effort here. I think back to now this is a little bit in the past, but they used to have a very, very, very centralized point of creative control that went into the greenlighting process of their games. The guy who was heading that up, he was one of the people that was ousted. This was in and around the time of all the Blizzard allegations. Unfortunately, his name does escape me. But I remember the story. I think it was somebody who is a very well-known writer in the games industry. It sucks I have to do this from memory. But it was some sort of Arthurian RPG.
Oh, yeah.
And your man basically just went and was like, no.
I remember that, yeah.
This is a stupid idea. And I just kind of look at what Ubisoft went and did. And I just think, you know what? I think any of these teams probably could have pulled off an Arthurian RPG. And in terms of like hitting a player fantasy, that would be so much more interesting in principle than just another entry into like, another template game. Now, obviously, that is slightly unfair because I'm trying to say that something that never happened would be better. I literally cannot prove that. And there's a lot of evidence to say that even if they did embark in that more interesting direction, that it wouldn't have panned out because so many of their games have not panned out. I mean, they talk about, of course, Rainbow Six, basically Tom Clancy, right? So Ghost Recon, they kind of murdered with Breakpoint.
Fumbled that so
Frontlines was a total big disaster, not what the players wanted. Even Rainbow Six, like Siege, big win. And while it really should have been better than it was, man, Extraction did disappoint people. You look at the Division 2, I mean, I think people, strong enough launch, but almost like some of what happened with, and this keeps on happening too, with Destiny 1 to Destiny 2. By the time of its end, and it's why we played Division to do a review in this channel, like so much for Division 2, because people were talking up the end state of Division 1 so much, and there's still some like key features and things that people really liked in Division 1 that never made it to 2. And that's kind of tricky because it does actually seem that the team at Massive pretty damn smart.
I think Division 2 specifically, I think, had that thing of started strong, it's people have lost interest. And then once you're at that, like, the trough, people stop paying attention. And then I believe the game got better, like, substantially so. So the embedded people who were like, okay, this game is for us, ended up being a niche that was well served in the end. But it's just, they lost the ability to start and keep it going.
Well, that's the
Whereas
thing
Siege was lucky enough to actually, like, improve while people were still playing it and build up. Whereas, like, there's just no oxygen in any of Ubisoft's games whatsoever.
Well, I think that's it. Like, people are analytical. People are risk adverse, and I think gamers are very good at noticing patterns. And it's just like, are you going to invest your money in a country that's like really politically unstable? No, you're not. Are you going to invest your time in a game that has bad buzz about it? No, you're not. And I think that's the issue that they had there, and probably why they decided to go for Heartland. doing a free-to-play entry into the Division. And I actually do think that is a smart enough plan when you look at what the Division games actually are like. I think doing a big free-to-play entry makes sense. There's just a humongous free-to-play audience that just are there, right? Yeah. So they've talked that up. There's been issues in the things even that they have, that they have talked up. Yeah. But they do say that they've seen per recent results with a reveal that trends have been markedly and surprisingly slower than expected. And in particular, Yves Guillemot said that they saw underperformance from, and this is interesting, Mario plus Rabbids Spark of Hope and Dance 2023 on release, despite excellent ratings and players' reception and an ambitious marketing plan. And that is one of the interesting things to me, because Mario plus Rabbids games are actually really, really good. And you would almost hope that they would just sit there in the Switch. And you know the way that, like, the Switch, just for some of those games around those core Nintendo IPs, they just have a remarkable attach rate, and it's seemingly not happening.
One of the things there that's been pointed out is this might be, I can't remember who it was. Whoever it was that looked at the numbers and saying, it might have been Chris String, saying that Mario and Rabbids Sparks Up was not a failure, it was just under expectations. But this might have been a Square Enix under expectations, because the first game launched in the Switch's launcher, which saw the least competition on a platform entirely. People picking up going, I'm going to spend a lot on Switch games this year. And now they've released there's a lot more competition on the platform. So I think it's done fine and it's been reviewed at all. It's one of the only games that Ubisoft released that's actually really, really, really strong. I even was watching a friend play it and like going through some of the challenges going, this is like a extremely well designed game in so many ways. It's beautiful, but they just don't have they don't have the expectations right. And that sort of thing is interesting. When they say trends have been like markedly and surprisingly slower than expected, I have a funny feeling they were like huffing their own gas, reading all their expectations every time. I think Ubisoft are really, I don't want to call them stupid, but it feels like they don't see what all of us see.
Yes,
and that's what really is that's why I don't see them surviving very long if they can't see the truth.
It's decision makers, I think, just being a bit out of touch, and also probably out of touch with their staff. I mean, you hear about, like, obviously a degree of hierarchy, like, is natural in companies, but you just hear about the way that they were content to run the company and sort of have some of these egomaniacs who are pretty abusive to their staff. Lead projects and lead teams. And it just seems to me like that's going to be a sort of, to be honest, a bit of an old boys club where everyone's pretty bullish that they know what's going on. And it did work for a while. And perhaps now that old school group of people is finding that they're out of touch with the industry.
Yeah. How much of Ubisoft's last maybe 15 years of whatever successes they found in the last 15 years, how much of that was genuinely just pure luck based on the same way that I guess a lot of publishers had luck with their developers doing exceptional work? How much of this is Assassin's Creed has succeeded, Rainbow Six Siege has succeeded despite Ubisoft, as opposed to because of them?
So, a AAA developer that, I respect a great deal, he sent me, it was a good... It was a good talk from, I think it's Bain and Company, up there with McKinsey. They're like one of those big consultancy firms. Oh, yeah. But it was about the essentially the problem of management's distance from the front line. And I think we can see this in really any workplace, even school, any institution that we're in, that the more layers there are between decision makers and between the frontline people actually implementing the thing, really the worse. And that's something companies need to be very, very, very careful about. And when you look at how Ubisoft does things, I mean, they have massive teams. They truly have like gargantuan teams. The amount of people it takes to make an Assassin's Creed is absolutely cracked. So I suppose it's hardly a surprise, given the way the company's been built, that it's going to run aground a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
For a myriad of those reasons. Now, how have they responded to this? Well,
do what they do best.
Yeah, they've cancelled 3 unannounced projects that were in development. Now, This is on top of 4 projects they cancelled in June 2022. That included Ghost Recon Frontlines and Splinter Cell VR. Now, as much as I am a VR enthusiast, and I love Splinter Cell, I'm not really going to begrudge them that, because when your house is on fire, is a Splinter Cell VR game going to help? No. It just isn't, even though I mean, that must suck for the people. But overall then, this is like 7 publicly cancelled projects since June of last year.
Yeah, and for a company who's almost certainly going to want to have a pretty good reputation publicly, and especially with how they've been managed traditionally, they're very, puff their chest out kind of people. The fact that they're publicly willing to announce that they've cancelled a ton of projects internally, it goes that they need to tell their shareholders, listen, we're not really that stupid. Please don't leave.
Speaking of which, Andy Robinson, the absolute legend, reached out to some sources, asked if they know what the cancelled games are. An Ubisoft source told me, hopefully one of the 30 million battle royales in development. So there you go. If you want a little bit of an insight into Guillemot thinking, I think you've got it here from Andy's source. I mean, yeah, they obviously did try. And they've had some projects that look pretty cool. Even look at your Hyperscapes and stuff. But it just ends up being but how much can this industry hold?
That's what I think Ubisoft are going to be on because we're going to get a little bit meta here, but I feel like because thinking about Just Dance 2023 not doing very well, thinking about the second Mario & Rabbids not doing very well, I feel like Ubisoft are going to be on that, because they make the least interesting games, because of the AAA games, of the big, this game is what you're going to play for the next couple of months, they're obviously on the back foot compared to everyone else. Outside of maybe EA with how Battlefield went, but EA have clearly, they are, in the sense of you talking earlier about how the further away management are from the front line, the more stuff will be lost, the less they'll understand. EA specifically have spent the last couple of years addressing that by having Laura Mill go, right, you're on the front line, see what the crack is.
Yeah, even the community thing with Skate.
Yeah, same with Vince Zampella. Obviously, Zampella's been close to the wire for a long time, so he'll know what to do and how to bring that back to management stuff. You see Activision Blizzard kind of improving a little bit on that, but they are obviously happy in their Call of Duty minds for now, so they're a little bit avoiding this problem by not having to engage with it. So it's with greater competition in video games, especially with the market having seen that boom and expecting to not maybe shrink, but it won't quite grow quite as big, because now once everyone on the planet's playing video games, there's no one left to play extra video games. As well as obviously cost of living, effectively a global recession, as to whether anyone's called it that or not. So you're going to see whoever's on the outside is going to be the one who's going to cast off first, the first thrown in the bin.
Yeah.
And Ubisoft are in every way the ones who are the least valuable, the most prone to being destroyed in a competition against other publishers who have been smarter and quicker on all of these fronts.
That's it. And I think the thing to talk about here is, and this is kind of like a broad principle, this is something that is broadly, I think, quite true in capitalism, depending on regulation, of course. And that is not to say that another system of organizations, such as communism, is going to be any better. I'm absolutely not saying that. With monopoly and stuff, I mean, obviously, in the other system, you have so many downsides too. But one of the things that does happen is a bit of a winner takes all, right? Monopoly is, in many ways, a natural endpoint in quite a lot of industries. I don't think it is in video games, but in terms of genres that own mind shares, I do think that it is. And I think that it's absurdly difficult to actually crowbar your way in there and take on the incumbent, especially with how content hungry things are. So when you look at the Battle Royale I say niche, no, I should say market segment. Looking at the BR market segment, do we see loads of games that are the same? We actually don't. We see a lot of pretty amazing game development that offers amazing experiences to players. I played Fortnite, and I know so many people are going to eye roll at Fortnite, but I wanted to see what was going on with, the Zoomers these days. Fortnite is a bloody well-made game. It truly is. And it offers, I was playing no build, it offers a different experience to the other two, really big battle royales. PUBG, it is my preferred one, because I like the milsim roots from it coming from Arma. But between those two and Apex and Warzone, they are different. You look at the shooter games that people play. It's not like there's multiple Call of Duties.
Yeah.
Like, Riot didn't make CSGO 2. They added in a new thing to shake it up. And I think some of the problem that Ubisoft are having is that they're not going where they have a first mover advantage. Like, they had a first mover advantage in the historical epic with Assassin's Creed. They had a first mover advantage with, in a bit, with like what they were doing with the Rainbow Six franchise in the past. Yeah, the Ghost Recon franchise in the past. Like, when I was a kid, this is back when wallbang was a new thing. And that might seem crazy to some of you, but I remember remember COD 4? People were thinking, oh my god, you can shoot through walls. This is a new game. But with GRAW 1 and GRAW 2, like, that was a major, like, that's like pretty major thing. Of course, still in, the old times of all games just being like gray and brown. But they're not moving anywhere where they have a first mover advantage. They are just making sloppy seconds. It's like they are playing, in the Dennis system, they're playing max roll. What I would want to see from them is, like, moving where they have that, like, a first mover advantage, doing something new. Yeah. Like, something genuinely new instead, because they have the talent. That's, like, the crazy thing. They have the development studios. They should be able to do this sort of thing.
Yeah, they have enough bodies that even if they didn't have talent, they could throw bodies at the wall and something would actually work. But yeah. I feel like they've just been doing that. I think there's maybe like a sense of urgency where like, oh, we need to build a project. I feel like they haven't had the time to go, right, let's get together like the leads of marketing and the leads of like each studio, sit down in a room and go, right, what can we do that's actually innovative? What can we do that's actually new? Can you like prototype stuff for your teams to see if anything's really interesting? And then you look at EA and you're like, oh, what does Respawn do? They prototype the shit out of everything and they clearly have like, I guess not even like brand new ideas, but the fact that Jedi Fallen Order came out of, can we do a Soul Star Wars? And you go, well, obviously you kind of roll your eyes at that, but then you think about it and go, oh wait, actually, that's a pretty good idea. Actually,
yeah, it was the throwing in the IP that's needed to make that feel new and hit a broad audience.
Yeah,
I think that's a game that's done tremendous things for gaming. How many people were more willing to try out Elden Ring because they heard Dark Souls was an inspiration for the Jedi game, right? To continue with the Ubisoft side, though, they've said they've been able to deprecate around 500 million euro of capitalized R&D concerning upcoming premium and free-to-play games and the newly cancelled games, which very much suggests we're going to be dealing with fewer games but safer bets. Maybe that's what they need to do to triage their situation. On top of that, they are going to be cutting costs by more than 200 million euro over the next 2 years. And as for the how there, it's because they're going to refocus on projects that will be safer bets. They're going to reduce staff and assets they don't think are contributing to that goal. And a lot of people will say that and be like, oh, right, look, the staff are being punished for management. That is the unfortunate thing. It's in some ways, it is management's fault for growing too big in the first place. We do see this with a lot of companies. Not to say that the pruning of Twitter has, always, not to say that that's by any means perfect, but you do find efficiency radically decrease as companies get larger. The sort of idea of the uber bloated big tech company is, I think, a fairly well understood thing. It is absolutely no surprise that the same thing can happen in the games industry. And, ultimately sucks for the staff, but undeniable mostly that in their position, like, if you're screwed, you got to do something.
To put it in a very simple, I guess, way to think about it, and this is a bit unfair because it's more complicated, but Ubisoft, just stop making a lot of bad games that no one wants to play. If you simply make a small number of good games that people will want to play, then you'll be able to make some money. Hard to argue with that, right? But that's the thing where you can just go ahead and do what you're already doing and then realize, oh, we're out of money and we're dead.
Yeah.
Or you can stop and go, should we maybe try something new for a change?
It's like,
hopefully this is them actually attempting that.
Yeah. Like, I know that you can have a bunch of tech bros who are all just circle jerking about fail fast, being like, oh yeah, I've had 15 failed startups so far. My entrepreneur Twitter bio is really awesome. But there is a lot of truth in fail fast. The idea there is, and it's why we ended up deciding to cancel some games before Pale. It's like, No, you gotta bench your ego, realize the thing's not going to exist, you're a part of the problem, and you just need to cut your losses now. It's a bit like sometimes you get CEOs who are complete cowards. They don't want to fire staff. They don't want to like reduce positions or something like that. They don't want to do that early when they should. So instead they end up running their company in a way that is super irresponsible and then leads to significantly more catastrophic problems down the line. And I think when you look at Ubisoft, you just see like that again and again and again and again. Yeah, just hubris.
As everyone watching from the outside could have told you 10, 15 years ago, Ubisoft were letting an infestation of shitty and like just an infestation of zero creativity grow.
An infestation of radio towers, almost literally.
Yeah. It's like there was a part where the way I see it is when things stop being memes, that's when you need to change immediately. Because people laugh about radio towers, but it's like, yeah, there's a little bit of recognition in being laughed at. But once you stop being, you're so cringe, you're no longer even funny. That's when you go, right, do something new, please.
Yeah.
Do something new, but they didn't learn that.
Oh dear. So this has led to a drop in net bookings expectations of 10%. Compared to the 10% boost they had previously expected, so 725 million euro versus their prior target of 830 million euro, which, I mean, let's still be real, that's a lot of euro coming in. It is. They're big franchises. AC, like, it is big, and when you look at the plan that they have for future AC titles, you do seemingly see a diversity in game format, and I think settings that will really appeal to people. I mean, hey, you say big game set in Japan, I'm instantly in. You say somewhat smaller game set in like medieval Baghdad, I'm like friggin' turbo in.
Yeah, so you've just described that Ubisoft's only chance of actual survival is to become the Assassin's Creed version of Activision Blizzard.
Oh dear.
Activision, where all they have is Assassin's Creed, because that's the only thing with market penetration, because they don't know how to penetrate a market. Well, they know how to be in a market. They don't know how to penetrate it.
You got to shore up your foundations, I guess. So as for why we have this 10% drop instead of a 10% boost, it's because of the 6th delay of highly successful developed game Skull and Bones, which no longer will be coming out the 9th of March. I know that this will come as tremendously deeply disappointing news to everybody who, of course, have been looking forward to the ultimate pirate fantasy, where you navigate a menu that is shaped like a 3D island, where you do things such as not swing onto an enemy ship and not engage fellow pirates in swashbuckling and sword fighting and that kind of thing. Almost as if you put a vague historical setting veneer on top of it and then remove most of the reasons why, let's say, Assassin's Creed Black Flag went down or Sea of Thieves is fun.
Yeah.
An Ubisoft original.
Imagine you've got Black Flag and you go, that's doing very well. And then 10 years later, you make a follow-up that doesn't have the same reason why people liked it. Like, I just assume no one at Ubisoft management plays video games or knows what they are. That's why, like, Mario and Rabbids is good, because the management clearly went, some weird kid shit, do whatever you want. And then they did it and it was good. But there's like, no, you need this to be, you can't have that, that's too expensive, you can't have that, you can't have that, you can't have that. It's all about the ship, because people love pirate ships. It's like, no, people like pirates, not pirate ships. But that's just lost on them.
Yeah.
So that we'll have to wait another couple months to see how much it will actually have us all buckled over with laughter, and if like Krobcat will get to make a nice video on it or something.
Oh, he definitely will. It is so it is being bumped a quarter. So instead of being Q1 2023, it's just Q1 fiscal year 2023. So it's all okay. Don't worry about it. Yeah. And I'm sure for the developers working on that project who have had to go through multiple different creative directions, multiple different leads, we believe multiple different settings for the game, as well as certainly rumbly talk about the workplace. And of course, just the issue of, hey, we've been trying to make this game for a decade or so. the death march will continue. And that is really brutal. And one of the things that I think, we have to think about as employers is like, what is the experience we're giving to our staff? Because like a rising tide should lift all ships, right? Like you do have a responsibility to your staff's futures, I think. And when you just have situations like this where it's a decade of failure, and then it just ends up being like death march, like at some stage it's got to be like, right lads, pack it in. Yeah. Pack it in. All the people working here are better off doing something else.
I have a funny feeling that a lot of the developers in this, the people working on Skull and Bones, what are the chances of them continuing to work in the game industry after this? I mean, I know there's a lot of turnover and a lot of like burnout in general, but can you imagine working this and going, oh yeah, I would love to start this process again, where I spent 40 million years working on what can only be described as schizophrenic game design documents, and then ultimately not get a credit to my name, probably, because you left before it shipped, or you get a credit on Skull and Bones, and every time you sign up for another job, they go, you worked on Skull and Bones? But that was fun. Next. You can imagine it like...
And when you actually go to what Ubisoft have said, though, because obviously everything they say has been so believable thus far, we believe players will be positively surprised by its evolution. We have decided to postpone its release in order to have more time to showcase a much more polished and balanced experience and to build awareness, which does make me wonder. It really does. Like, have they seen people's reaction to just, hang on, is this just a resource acquisition circle with a thin veneer of pirate fantasy? That's like, really, that's it? Like, have they seen that and tried to do something against it? Maybe, and maybe it would be wise to do that, but also what can truly be achieved in that amount of time and at what human cost, I think I would say. But it's okay, Matt, let's talk about that year to come, because obviously we are going to be getting Skull and Bones soon. Yeah. So a big win in Ubisoft.
Yeah, so I guess we could say, because I know, I think it was Stephen Totillo of Axios was saying that 2023 has the potential to be one of the grandest years in gaming. Let's see what Ubisoft have to add to that grand year.
Well, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, which has been delayed to 2023.
Good. Another 2022 game.
You know what? I see Ubisoft massive. I see the Snowdrop engine and what that's clearly been able to achieve in the past. I think that's a pretty cool world that maybe would translate to a video game better than, the movies are very impressive in many different ways. Definitely not the narrative side. So you know what? Tentatively, sure. Assassin's Creed Mirage, which is rumored to have been delayed to 2023. You know what? I think that's somewhere where they do generally experience more wins, so I'm happy to say that should be okay. So overall, 3 relatively big games. They're also saying that there are other yet to be announced premium games, including a large one, as well as promising free-to-play titles for some of our biggest brands. Now, apparently the large one is rumored to be a premium Tom Clancy game. That's at least based on what we kind of know of development cycles and some projects. Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed are spoken for, and then it's also kind of unlikely that, Ubisoft would refer to like a Rayman game or a Rabbids game as something like that. So many are thinking it's going to be a Ghost Recon. It's also the case that a Far Cry could happen as well. And as for the free-to-play game, based on the law of averages, you could assume it's also a Tom Clancy.
Ubisoft.
Because they keep on trying there. So, according to Frederick, their CFO, who I'm sure I've bastardized the name of, they're preparing the biggest pipeline of games that Ubisoft have had in its history for fiscal year 23 to 24. I think that really does show us the corporate sprawl. You think of urban sprawl, and this is like corporate sprawl. Like, they have cancelled so many games over so many years, and still they have quite a lot coming out this year. But obviously, Avatar game, will that just be another Ubisoft? I mean, look, if it could be Horizon but with blue people, to be honest, I think that actually could work pretty much just fine.
Here's the thing. When did they start making the game?
Okay, it's going to be Horizon with blue people, isn't it?
They started making obviously especially all the climate stuff as well. Yeah, it's going to be Horizon with blue people, but probably worse.
Hang on though. Mm-hmm. Blue people, kind of cool. Blue people go ride banshees. So actually, there could be more room. But that said, the combat system in Horizon, whenever the difficulty curve and like balance is kind of right, as you were saying, like actually in the harder difficulties, they did actually have a real damn good game in there.
Yeah, I would trust Guerrilla to make a better game than anyone at Ubisoft any day of the week, just because Ubisoft, I've played Ubisoft games. I know how they come out, and they're never as clean, they're never as polished. And I think extra time will probably just be, because obviously they say extra time for polish, but it'll be extra time for polish, and also while you're at it, crunch to do this, please, Mr. Developer, etc. So I imagine it'll just be, maybe it's just pure doomerism because I don't trust Ubisoft, but it is like, and then there's the other part of Avatar is a very big brand, very big IP, and the movie did pretty well in the box office. Pretty well is really an understatement. It's like the 7th highest grossing or something. Very well, but will that translate to people buying the video game for $70?
Your difference, it could just be like, what will that Avatar launch cadence be? Because it did seem like they were gearing up to, a big wait and then quite a lot more Avatar projects. Assassin's Creed Mirage, at the very least, I could say that because it seems to be a return to a older style of game, maybe it's a bit more bounded. Maybe it could be a more focused, kind of highly reviewing situation. Obviously, only time will tell. Now, some interesting stuff from Jeff Grubb here, who again is one of those people who he knows who to talk to. He has a lot of sources in the industry. Ubisoft definitely already did the rounds proposing acquisitions and mergers with other similar companies, and it mostly got laughed at. It's just too unwieldy. Again, talking about that corporate sprawl. Its strength was its distributed development structure, and now that is an albatross. I hope it tries to ride it out, because I think it might hold on to more people than if it tried to slim down for mergers and acquisitions. Either way, though, it seems grim. Making games is rough business. I think the idea there is that, like, hey, if you're Ubisoft, well, what happens if you trim all the fat? You utterly slice your costs into oblivion, and you just say, all right, do you want Rainbow Six, Assassin's Creed, and like Just Dance? That's us. We need the Gilmo parachute, please. So, as for the reaction, stonks. Number go down. And this isn't one of those things where, you say, oh my God, billions of market cap wiped out as stock falls 10%. And then like a day later, the stock is back up 8%. Here we have seen a protracted decline for Ubisoft. They were, they were up at the 40s, then they're in the mid 40s, and then September 2022, we do see steep decline, never recovered. They trade sideways, and now obviously this is going down. The thing though will be, where will Ubisoft settle at? I think for the market though, they know that multiple long-term lines of business have been cancelled, and I think that might be really rather rattling to them. I mean, good thing from Benji. Keep in mind, Ubisoft went from no free-to-play games to suddenly having Hyperscape, Division Heartland, X-Defiant, Ghost Recon Frontline, Roller Champions, and multiple other games.
All of these are resounding success.
Yes. So, as for a view from the inside, this is a man great timing with our recording schedule. Kotaku actually do have some well-placed sources inside Ubisoft. Okay, Skull and Bones. A strike team was established in Ubisoft's Paris studio to get it finished in a releasable state. Ubisoft actually responded to Kotaku's query on this, confirming that, basically just saying, to fully deliver the launch, we're leveraging the full power of co-developing studios already involved in the development process, including Paris studio. Singapore remains the lead. So basically just, hey, we need to call in the cavalry. We need to get this over the finish line. Now, from some of the workers then, they've definitely, they've had problems with retention, and this is from 3 sources. They are already seeing cuts, by the way, of fewer backfills for recently departed colleagues and fewer contracts getting renewed for those working on a temporary basis. It's the sort of thing of, you just don't replace your losses and you see if the output stays the same. Yeah. Because you're just kind of thinking, how much slack did exist in the system? I wonder if that's the type of cost cutting that they really aim to do.
Definitely.
But overall then, experienced staff not being replaced. Overall workload seemingly not being decreased. Overall then, atmosphere of concern, worry, that sort of thing. Also then, Yves Guillemot, who last year did cement his effective control of Ubisoft by a bit of a partnership with Tencent. He sent an email, and I'm sure very good words here. Today, more than ever, I need your full energy and commitment to ensure we get back on the path to success. I'm also asking each of you to be especially careful and strategic with your spending and initiatives to ensure we're being as efficient and lean as possible. So, damn. I mean, Yves must be really far away from the front line then. That's what I get from that email.
Could you?
Yves is the World War I general, friggin' way behind the line.
Yeah, like, could you imagine being the CEO and facing a problem and just basically send an email that to a lot of people will feel like, oh, it's your fault. We have done nothing wrong. It is entirely your fault. Please make our company good. Thank you. I was like, sorry, but you're the one who's you're the leader. You're the leader. Don't just say, do your job right. That's not how this works. That's not how it ever works.
Yeah, you can't just say push hard, try hard. I mean, look, a little bit of that can work. It is important to rally the troops.
Yeah.
But that is not how you fix an organizational issue.
He could have just sent an email to everyone saying skill issue. Like, that's what it felt like. That's what it looks like. It's just, sorry, you're not doing a good enough job. Do better. You're like, yeah, but is your ship?
Hey, Singapore, get good. By the way, Paris is in.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, look, rough stuff. I know that we certainly went a little bit over time with this video, but honestly, there is so much fat to chew on this one because really it is ostensibly a story about video games. And I mean, just look at a tweet if you want to see what's happened in terms of like what games will I get or not get. But really here, the lesson, the learning, the thing to understand is in like company structure, company leadership, distance of decision making from the front line, like all of these things that when combined with corporate sprawl that kind of, I think, resulted from outsized success with certain IPs. I mean, this is like the opposite of Bobby. Because Bobby B? Not Bobby B, Bobby K. There, I've lost my mind. Mark Addy, I'm very sorry. But yes, with Kotick, like he decided to focus when he had outsized success, I guess. And that probably made very happy shareholders. What's happened with Ubisoft, though, is I think they saw outside success and then they just tried to go really, really big everywhere all at once. Yeah. And it ended up in sprawl that didn't work.
Yeah, which is, I think interesting to me, the prospect of Ubisoft maybe being, I guess, existentially challenged by this, because obviously they've got loads of money. They could just, destroy loads of staff, like, all right, sorry, we can't afford this anymore. We'll go back to doing Assassin's Creed and maybe something else. So Ubisoft, in, I guess, the name, the business will likely survive for a long time. But the idea of them being culturally relevant for long is starting to go away. And I think that's interesting for people of our age who are used to the video game industry being the way it was. And the way it was for, the vast majority of like our adolescence and early adulthood with, hey, it's the big three. It's the big three publishers and then the big three platform holders. And I kind of waxed a little lyrical about Xbox buying Activision Blizzard and how that will disrupt the big trio in a way that video games will feel different for a long time. But I feel like that's going to be even worse if Ubisoft kick the bucket or, I guess, buy out of the race of big publishers. We're just going to be in a very weird place where I guess the bigger publishers will only get bigger because Ubisoft can't actually act as competition or can't act as innovation in this space. Yeah. Because as much as we mean by radio towers being pointless and, obviously the Ubisoft did a great job of extrinsically motivating players a lot of the time, it was still innovation that other people got to hop onto and go, okay, well, how can we do this better? How can, Ghost of Tsushima, as an example, is an open world Ubisoft game. Except it's not by Ubisoft, it's by Sony, so it's substantially better. Those devs are like, yeah, we'll do this, but we'll do all of the things to make it feel better as a game and feel like, innovate on top of it. But without another big publisher, when it's just, oh, who's the big publishers? Xbox, Sony, and EA, who are even a little bit falling behind. and then you kind of see what does it look like in 15 years?
So,
Does it look like the only massive players in video games truly left are the platform holders of Sony and Microsoft, and then obviously Nintendo doing whatever they want, which is making wonderful games on the side? Is that what the future is like at this rate?
What we need is powerful third parties. We need Ubisoft, Take-Two, Embracer, Electronic Arts. We genuinely want them to be in strong competitive positions. As we just talked about in the previous video on this channel, like what happens when Nvidia has 86% market share, is able to use their humongous success to make a whole bunch of technological moats around their audience with DLSS, because like, look, that's an awesome feature for gamers, totally. But like, how does AMD catch up? How do we get a nice, competitive market that's really good for us, even in a situation when then Nvidia are going to be competing with the actual, the add-in board people? Well, it is like that. Like, as much as sometimes it's fun to laugh at big company with big money go boom, we really do not want that, because it will be bad for the industry.
We need them.
Bobby Kotick needs competition, everyone.
Yeah.
Or to be acquired by Microsoft and given the boot. But anyway, you get the point. Big old shit show. I hope you found this to be an entertaining episode, because as much as we can go all high and mighty about like things we can learn and we can talk about management, blah, blah, blah.
Ubisoft are funny.
It's also very funny. So, it was funny. And I'll probably have some fun in Baghdad and in Mirage, because that seems really cool. All right.
Get cancelled, yep.
Goodbye. That's it for today's episode. Yeah. Check out this one in NVIDIA if you want another fun shit show.